Welcome to the Mandala Podcast, where we help you feel your best body, mind, and soul.
Hi, and welcome back to the Mandala Podcast. Bree Jaworski here, a licensed mental health therapist and board certified health coach. And today I am super excited because I have an awesome guest who I'm going to introduce here in a second. But for anybody who has been listening to the podcast, on the last episode, I told the story of the birth of my son. And so I'm not going to recap the whole thing. You'll have to go back and listen to it. But there was a very integral part that was played in the birth story that I really didn't get into a ton of detail at the end, kind of when things went south and everything happened and I had to be rushed to the hospital and all that stuff. So I did mention in the story about my birth doula, and that's who I have here today. So I have Amy here today, and I'm really excited for you guys to hear some of the things that she has to say. And I'm going to ask her some questions that I think the average person would want to know about what a doula is and all that kind of stuff. But I want to add a little bit more context to the story that I told last week, just so you get an idea of one of the many reasons why Amy is so near and dear to my heart. But so for those of you who listened to the last podcast, I told the story about the birth of my son and how things went south. So Amy was here throughout my whole laboring and all of that stuff. And that's exactly what we expected. But as for those of you who listen, the things that we expected did not end up being the way that we expected them to be near the end. So the part that I didn't really get into last time was how amazing and how grateful I am to have had Amy as my doula. Now, the things that Amy did were a lot of the things that I wasn't even there for, because I had been rushed away in the ambulance and taken to the hospital. But Amy was literally an angel. She is an angel. And my husband and I both agree. She is like literally an angel on earth. And she had to basically take my son, who had just been born, I mean, maybe an hour old, maybe less, get him dressed, get him in a diaper, get him in the car, help my husband. This is our first child. My husband's never put a child in a car seat before. You know, she had to help him do all of this to get him into the car. She went with him, met up with my family, my mom, sat with them for hours. I mean, I gave birth to my son at 9-something p.m. and Amy was with my family well into the middle of the night, totally disregarding her own needs and her own family. And, you know, for the sake of my family, which is, just like, I get emotional talking about it, but just totally above and beyond everything that was, you know, that she was, I guess, employed to do, totally went above and beyond all of that. So Amy is amazing. And I had asked her if she would be willing to come on today to talk about her role as a doula and answer some questions. And she thankfully agreed. So she is here today and I'm so, so excited. Amy, how are you? Looking beautiful. So happy to have you on the show today. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. I'm doing well. Thank you.
I'm so happy that you're here. I think a lot of people just don't know what a doula is, especially for those that don't have kids maybe. And even for those who do, a lot of people just don't understand kind of the differences between like a doula and a midwife and things like that. So those are some of the things I hope to like clear up for everybody today. So why don't we start with you telling us what is a doula?
Sure. By definition, a doula is a professional who supports others through pregnancy, childbirth, and postpartum. But put into practice, that's a professional who is trained and then hired to help others hopefully achieve their healthiest and most satisfying experience. So essentially, we work with women and families to like help reduce your fears, help instill strength, and provide resources throughout your pregnancy. And then once you're in labor, we join you and we use those hands-on techniques that we're trained in to help like lower your levels of discomfort and then boost levels of joy. You know, we add in different flair. We all have a different flair, all of us doulas. So we'll bring little things to your birth space to try to help your ambiance and just your whole emotional well-being. So lots of affirmations and encouraging words from us. We constantly say, you can do it. You are doing it. And it sounds a little silly to say, it's not scripted, but when you're in the moment of labor, I don't think there's a single client who hasn't looked up and said, I can't do this,
Absolutely.
You get to that point where you think you really can't. So we're there to sit there and reassure you. So you'll hear some people call us labor coaches. So, ultimately we take responsibility for helping others feel seen and heard.
That's awesome. And you 100% did that for me and like continue to do that for me, even in the early parts. I mean, my son is now 17 months old, so I would still consider myself like a novice parent, but like in the beginning I really was, so even just helping me through that part too was really valuable to me. Is there anything that like, I guess, what are the boundaries for a doula? Like, what does a doula not do, or what is a doula not responsible for?
Yeah. Well, we aren't healthcare professionals, so we cannot diagnose or treat any medical conditions. So that means you can't just look to a doula to provide your prenatal care if you have a health condition first, but then also if you want to be able to catch something that comes up that could impede the health of you or the baby. We're not supposed to give medical advice. Every now and then we'll try to find ways to slip it to you a little bit, even though we can't tell you this is what I think it is. Sometimes there's a gray area there, but
more like experiential, like, this has been my experience with other people, or this has been my experience myself, something like that.
Or preface it with, well, I can't give you medical advice, but call your doctor,
Right.
And can't perform clinical procedures. I can't give you physical assessment. I can't give you behavioral assessments. So there's mental health coming into play. I might just encourage some therapy, some counseling, but I can't sit and assess any of that. So, and we can't take responsibility for any outcomes in your pregnancy or your childbirth.
Right. So would you say it's more of like a supportive role?
It is completely supportive. Yeah. You'll see it's emotional, physical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so for my birth, because I had my baby at home, obviously if you have your baby in the hospital, like it's, assumed that there are going to be nurses and doctors there. But I did actually have to have a medically trained midwife at my birth as well as Amy. So they had two completely separate roles, and we're two completely separate and different people, and had two completely separate and different experiences with Amy versus the midwife. So, but yeah, so I think that's the big thing that, just to clarify, like, you're not medical, like you still need that medical piece.
You are, there's nothing technically illegal about free birthing at home. And so you will hear plenty of cases of where a person has chosen to have a doula, but they're having a free birth, which means they won't have a midwife. There is nobody medically trained. But my certifying organization, which is DONA International, prevents me from doing that. Not that I would personally choose to put myself in that position. But it's an option as well. There are doulas who do work without midwives in the home births. So,
okay. So that's good to know. Yeah. Now, can you explain what the difference is between like a birth doula and a postpartum doula? And do you do both of those things?
I have worked as both. Generally, for me personally, my availability to be in one role prevents me from stepping into the other for time constraints. I can't commit to being there for postpartum if I'm on call for births. So I spend my year like breaking up when I'm doing each different work. I'll take a few months off from birth to focus on postpartum. So, but both roles require an unbiased person to come in. So we do like transfer like our support roles between both birth and postpartum. Most doulas do. And since we are like not regulated and we're not supervised, I can't give you like a blanket statement on what everyone is doing. But for my services specifically, when people come in to hire me as a birth doula, generally it's in the middle of a pregnancy, although you can hire a doula at any time. You could say, I'm 39 weeks and I've decided I don't want to do this alone, or whatever the issue is, there's always a reason. So it's never too early. It's never too late. But the earlier you do hire your doula, the more time you have to get to know them and start that relationship building. Because that's what a lot of this is about, is literally building relationship, building trust, and having somebody that is unbiased walking through this with you, that is not in your ear telling you what their fears are. Your family members will recount their stories. And so, I'll go through and I have a series of meetings in person with my clients. And in the first one, I just get to know them and try to discuss, find out what they actually know about childbirth already. Get to know them. If it's a couple, get to know the couple, and then talk about their birth preferences. So we kind of just go through all kinds of things about life in that first meeting. And then we step away generally for even a month or two even. So then around week 37, I come in to do what we kind of call labor rehearsal. And at that meeting, we discuss all things labor, what to see, what they may see, smell, hear. And at that meeting, I really focus on the birth partner and helping them to understand their role and how they can help their partner and what they can expect, and find out what they need to feel supported, so they feel like an active participant when it comes time for this, because there's two people, half of the time involved in the birth of the baby. So right. So then all through this time, there's a lot of text relationship going on, phone calls. Sometimes we meet for dinner, coffee. But then we finally get together again in labor when it's time has come. And I prefer to meet my clients at their home first, where we can focus on relaxation techniques, help active labor come on and stay, and, make sure we're in active labor and we're going and body's loose and we're feeling really good before we enter the hospital, if it's a hospital birth. So there's not a stall. So then I stay for the duration of the labor, the baby's born, and then I help generally with the first latch. Especially the first time parent. It's like foreign territory, you read about it, you see the classes, and now all of a sudden it's just everything feels rushed a lot. So you just had the baby and now they want to focus on that first latch. So I like to stick around for that, because a lot of bedside manners are different, and I know that my clients prefer more sensitive touch and approach. So stick around for that, get you hopefully a really nice, good cooked warm meal. Take pictures of you and the baby and your significant other. Make sure you're feeling comfortable. Make sure everybody's stabilized. And then when it's the right time, I head on out for that time being. And then I generally return in the first 10 days of the baby's life to the client's home. It's generally around day 5, seems to be like the golden day. And we just review the birth. There's usually a lot of talk about breastfeeding and pumping, because it's definitely just a whole different area of focus. So at that point, just passing on tips and tricks and answering questions about baby wearing. So we just kind of go over, okay, how do I set them up now for another few weeks? And then that leads into postpartum, right? I
remember all of those things.
You just take it a week or 2 at a time, and then check back in, maybe stop back in and work on something else for a few hours. So that's where my postpartum doula work is a little bit different. I don't do it full time, so I'm not selling big packages where I'm just there with you all the time. I have a different approach where it's just 12 to 20 hours max really for each client. I feel like can be booked after the birth services. And that just allows me to come back in when you're having hard moments, or you need a night of sleep with your partner. And do an overnight.
Which is huge. Anybody that has little ones knows that first, those first few weeks or months even, you're barely getting any sleep. And so just to have that extra support is huge.
So.
Awesome. I remember all of those things. And I think I hired you around 20 weeks. I think I was about halfway through my pregnancy. And it was my first pregnancy. And I remember you, Amy, being the first person that didn't make me feel insane for wanting a home birth. Like everyone else was like, you're crazy. I can't believe you want to do that. Oh my gosh, you're
Right.
insane. You were the first person that was like, okay.
Yeah, I remember being like, oh, this home is cozy. Look at this is already set up with twinkly lights. And
Yes.
yes.
Oh yeah. And that's so true. Like you made the space feel like the day, and again, like I went into labor in the middle of the night. So my labor started at like 1 a.m. So I think I waited like an hour, like just to make sure, before I alerted even my husband or anyone at that point. But
Right.
literally you came to my house in the middle of the night. So I think
Mhm.
you got there at like 4 or 5 a.m. or something like that. So yeah. And so she's definitely will be there at any point you need her, like when you're going into labor. And I just felt like because I'd never been through, I'd never had a child before. There were so
Right.
many things that I had questions about. And you're right. Like when you talk to family members and friends, even, most of my friends at that point, that's changed a little bit since then, but most of my friends at that point didn't have any children. So it's not, I'm sure they're well-meaning, but they don't know either. And, so just having that person that you can bounce ideas off of and you can ask questions and they can lead you, like just help you to like navigate things. That was like
Right.
really helpful to me, especially if you don't have a person that like a designated person in your mind that you can go to. Like for me, I didn't have any family or an older sister or anything like that I could go to for that. And so that was like incredibly helpful to me just to be able to, because I am like that. I feel like in my practice even and earlier before I had a private practice or anything, I used to work in domestic violence. And so just like an example of that, like when someone had to go to court for something, like I would do exactly what you're saying. Like I would make sure they knew exactly like where to go, where to park, like all the little details that can be stressful if you don't know them, So it's like, this is already a stressful event. So let's at
Right.
least let you know exactly what I can help you like to navigate it as well as I can. Obviously we can't we don't know every little detail of how it's going to play out, but I can help you to have an understanding of how the things work and all the, and it just like
Sure.
eases your anxiety so much. And I always felt like that with my clients. Like if I can just give them any bit of information leading up to this that can help them, to get to the big finale,
Right.
And so, yeah, I felt like that was so helpful in you doing that. What made you want to be a doula?
Well, most recently would be, going through this experience myself.
Mm-hmm.
But when I think about that, when people ask me, I realize it stems back to childhood, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll go back there in a second. But I had my son in a birth center in California.
Mm-hmm.
And I was somebody prior to motherhood who thought I was supposed to do things on my own. So I was one of those, I got it, the hyper independent, hyper vigilant. Right.
Yes.
We work through those things. But
yeah, I get that.
So my innate response was I felt like I needed to just go in my bedroom alone to do this or go in the backyard. But I just moved to Sacramento and the city, and I knew all these neighbors were not going to want to hear those sounds in the backyard. And
I don't know,
so
maybe.
I was like, I can't do this. I don't even have one trained person to come over, to monitor me. So I ended up at the birth center in Davis, and they had doulas provided as part of the package. So I didn't know my doula, and I personally, at that time in labor, did not want anybody touching me, even though prior to that, I loved massage, So, but once I felt like a hand on my back, it was like I couldn't take it. So
yeah.
I just
you don't know how you'll be until you get
No.
there either. There's no way to know that.
Right. I'm like, I'm so sorry. I have no idea why I don't like this. I'm sure it feels good, but it doesn't, And I just kept apologizing. I just had these women and they're witnessing me the whole time and I wouldn't take medication. I literally did my crawl in the backyard alone, but in that birth center. And, so when I came, in my postpartum time, just thinking back, I was like, wow, these women were there for me. And what an amazing job. I was in such a vulnerable position. Yes. I didn't know any of them. And, I kept thinking don't you guys have somewhere to be? You don't have to wait this long, it was funny. It was comical and really endearing. And, And then prior to that, like I'm kind of going reverse chronological. Before I conceived my son, I fell into elder caregiving of very elderly women who, I had to bathe them, make their food, do their laundry. So I started mothering these very old women for a few years. And I did that.
That takes like a certain type of person to do that too. Like, not everybody can do like a caregiving type of job like that.
Yeah, I didn't know I could either. It fell into my lap. I had a friend whose mom needed help, and one thing led to the other with everybody recommending me. And before I knew it, I was working with older women with full-blown Alzheimer's, So not only was I mothering them, I was having to navigate a medical issue I actually didn't know about. So, but it was a really peaceful job for me. It was very healing in so many ways. And I really believe that it prepared me for motherhood 100%. If I didn't have that role and I went straight from the life I had to motherhood, I probably wouldn't have had such an easy time from what I feel. So, and then it dates back to, being 7 years old, I brought in a pregnant cat into my bedroom and helped her have babies in the closet one night. And so, and I kept a lot of them.
Yeah, that's the hardest part. Kittens are literally the cutest thing in the world. So I'd be like, I have to keep all 7 of them. Well, Amy knows I have 5 cats. So cats aren't as cute though, but kittens, kittens
they were very cute. And I definitely realized it had a lasting impression on me as far as being enamored with birth. So I just, that like nurturing piece, even people that are mothers, I think we're kind of expected as mothers to be like somewhat nurturing, but not everybody has that like innate sense of being nurturing. Some people have to kind of work at that. And I just feel like you are like a very naturally nurturing person. And that's the kind of person that I want, like you said, in your most vulnerable time. I mean, Amy has seen all parts of me. Like she probably knows my body like just as well as my husband and I do. Like she has seen me in all sorts of crazy positions, because labor is not glamorous, and it's, and I was at home, so I was just free, and but like you want somebody there that is not judging you, is not like, and it's just like literally there for like whatever you need, and is nurturing, and like that like calm energy. I don't know, like that's definitely what I would suggest for anybody that's looking for a doula, to find somebody with that kind of like energy, because you don't want like a frantic kind of or pushy or like that's, at least for me, that would have been like an energy that I would not have been able to deal with well while you're in labor, because like you said, like you didn't even want to be touched, like you don't know. And I just wanted everything to kind of be like calm and quiet, and I think I was pretty quiet like during the labor. And I mean, there were definitely people in my life that I knew like before I even went into labor, I knew I did not want them to be there, just because their energy would not have been a good match for what I was trying to like accomplish. And and you just have a very like calming energy, and also I guess not like an intrusive energy either. It's like you were there when I needed you, and then you knew when to step away. I think even like, I mean, because it was my first baby, and for anybody that has kids, like, that typically speaking, your first labor is a lot longer, and mine was 19 hours. So I think there was even a point in the labor where you left for a little, like I said, like go, like nothing's happening for a while, like go home. Oh, that's right.
And like you left, but I needed that. Like I needed to just like rest, and I didn't, you know what I mean? And so it was like you just kind of innately knew like when to be there, when to pull back, when to leave, when to come back, like I just felt like it was kind of effortless. And it was just, I just think you're just inherently very good at sensing that kind of stuff, because not everybody knows how to like read the room kind of thing, and you have to, because that's the other thing. When you're in labor, you don't want to be bombarded with questions either. You don't want someone being like, are you okay? Do you need anything? Like you just don't. You want someone to just kind of do it, like do it or don't do it. And that I think you were just excellent with me. And like, I just appreciated that so much. And also you touched on this a little bit, but with the partner, the birthing partner, like my husband, he didn't know, he knew less than I knew, and I knew basically nothing. And, but you were there to help him kind of navigate through the whole thing too. And so he didn't feel useless or in the way, or like he was like, making things worse for me, or, you know what I mean? Like, you helped him to navigate that whole process too, which, and like I said, and afterwards completely, when I wasn't even there, like, he will literally be forever grateful to you because he just loves and adores you, as do I. But
Yeah, that's a big piece of it that a lot of people don't realize too, is like, we're there for the birth partner as well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
yes, that's important.
I hope most doulas are, but
yeah,
it's
right.
A lot of birth partners are literally, they're like deer in headlights, and it's sad because they're just kind of thrown into this situation. And even if they picked up a couple books, they're not prepared for what's about to happen. And then they see their significant other feeling a lot of pain, like in a way they've never seen them before.
Yes.
So being there,
it must be kind of like a helpless feeling,
Yeah.
And so I think you help them to not feel helpless.
Yeah, it's empowering for them as well to be more enmeshed with you in your experience instead of like vigilant and wondering what's going on. So to have someone kind of standing over, being like, oh, she's okay. That's what it looks like, or that's what it smells like. It's okay. Just rub her back,
Yes.
Yeah. So
right. Yeah. Because just like anything, like, it's just scary. This stuff, like fear of the unknown, is scary for most people. Right. And so, you did a great job of that too. What's something incredible that you've learned or witnessed, like, in your time being a doula, like something that has just been like really cool to see or experience with someone?
I mean, I have been a part of a few births where they're kind of more of the rare, baby being born butt first, baby being born in the amniotic sac and call. So those things are cool to see, but I think like my favorite thing to witness is really just seeing like the power of the mind, like each person, and witnessing that. And then things I've learned. I mean, I've learned everything. I learned exactly what happened in my own birth.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I feel like I'll never stop learning in this realm, this industry, so it's one of the things that also really attracts me. There's just so much to just keep learning and connecting the dots on. But then for me personally, like, it's enhanced my life. I learned that it's perfectly acceptable to ask for help. I have no problem now asking for help. There's no shame or any uncomfortable feelings attached. It's just like, we're all here to support each other.
Right.
And so that's been monumental for my own life by stepping in this role. So I learn a lot from all of my clients. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're pretty amazing. I feel like I love just learning from them too. So
yeah. I just feel like, especially if you come from a place of like you were talking about your birth story, like of more like independence, like I can do this. And like, that's been my whole life basically, has been like, I can do this. If I can't do it, I'll figure it out on my own. And there's something really freeing about giving birth, because like you realize that, you probably could do this on your own, but when it's your first time, like, it is so nice to like have that support. And like, you do, like, there's some sort of like, you just have to like, just let it go, and to be able to do that with someone that's trustworthy and supportive and helpful, it just makes the experience so much better. At least it did for me. I mean, I'm speaking in generalities. I can really only speak for myself, but it just made it so much better. And I just think like, you have to be vulnerable. Like, you have to allow yourself to be vulnerable, because it's a very vulnerable thing what you're doing. And it allows you to kind of at least be given the chance to lean on someone else, which is, I think, a valuable thing in general, just for like general growth, for me, definitely.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of us change as we go into parenthood. We realize that, like, wait, we're not going to go through this whole journey on our own, doing it all on our own. So like, start with asking for help. And
and it's uncomfortable, like, especially for somebody that's like uber independent, like, it can be very uncomfortable to ask for help and stuff. But that's definitely like a learning subject that I'm still working on myself, but
Yeah.
it's always a journey. What do you feel like is the most fulfilling part of your job?
I don't know about most fulfilling. I really enjoy like watching people become parents. Even if I only know them for like a few months of their pregnancy, just sitting,
Yeah.
Getting to know them and having those conversations. And then I usually end up knowing everybody for years, like I would say 75% of my clients, first birthdays, first babysitter, so then just seeing the transformation of everyone, kind of stepping into parenthood. And then it's just also really beautiful to see that how much like new people coming into the world, babies, are so like loved and cherished, and so it's made me think if we would just start broadcasting these beautiful births for more people to experience and see, I think a lot of people would soften their hearts and just like see like love is always generally the answer. So every time you get invited to like support a client, see another birth, you get good reminders. So
I remember you like mentioned this before, but you take like a lot of photos with my phone, which also I thought was like a nice touch, because like again I'm all like sprawled out, but like you take the photos and videos. Oh my goodness. Well, I remember you told me you gave the phone back to me like at the end or whatever, and you were like, now you might not want to look at some of these right away.
Right.
Because like it was kind of traumatizing. I mean, I've seen them now, but like I'm like, oh, I can see why she said that now.
Yeah.
Because probably not something you want to watch right away.
Yeah, I usually try to grab if there's a husband or boyfriend, like use their phone if they'll let me.
Yeah.
And then once time has passed, I can share them,
Yeah. I was happy it was on my
but
phone. Like I knew I had control. I knew it was there.
Yeah.
And I could look at it when I wanted to. But I just remember you telling me that. And I was like, that was actually very good advice. Like a good disclaimer to go with some. Because
I know most people don't listen to it. They're like, I want to see. And I'm like, it's a little early for some of those photos. But okay.
Yeah. Like some of them are fine. But like, basically all the past the point where he was out of my body, those I could look at no problem. But the ones before that, you're like, whoo. And the other thing, so in regards to resources, like one of the resources that Amy recommended to me and I ended up doing was a program called Hypnobabies. And I will leave the link for the Hypnobabies in the show notes. But it was a program that I started, don't quote me on this, but I think it was like 6 to 10 weeks out from like my due date. And so you just like practice. And that was something that I used during my unmedicated home birth, which I felt like helped a lot too. And so like, again, when we talk about resources, that's something that like your doula can help with, is like getting you connected to resources that you probably don't know exist. Cause why would you need that unless you're having a baby? You probably don't even know stuff like that is out there. So that was really helpful. And I feel like that helped a lot with like the mental part of it and like pain management as much as possible in regards to like a mental aspect of pain management. So that was really cool. Was there anything that you wish that more people knew about doulas?
Yeah, I think more people would benefit from knowing that we're not here working just for women who have decided they don't want medication in birth or they want a home birth.
Yeah.
So if you really hire a doula and you want that like partnership through this journey, there is value in hiring a doula, even if you know you're going to have a planned C-section for whatever reason.
100%.
So there's so much that can go on through your pregnancy, and that the supportive role of having a doula, and then she's still there at the hospital. So after your C-section, then there she is in your recovery room with you, so
yeah,
and postpartum. Yeah. So it's not like, oh, you don't need a doula because you don't want an epidural. So epidurals, drug-free, and doula is not synonymous. So
yes, I think that's a really good point. Cause you don't have to have like a birth like I had or like Amy had in order to utilize the services of a doula or get value out of having a doula. I think that is a really good point to make. So I definitely don't want anyone to think that if they're going a more traditional route of like what they want their birth plan to be, that a doula wouldn't be helpful, because I absolutely think that it would be, no matter what the circumstances.
Yeah. We support people, not philosophies. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Which I love. That is a really good point. What's something that you wish that pregnant women knew just more of in general?
Oh gosh. There's a lot. So I would first say, that your like medical practitioner and what they tell you, those aren't laws.
Mm-hmm.
So they may sound very reassuring in what they're saying to you at your very short appointment,
Yes.
And you leave thinking, oh, I have to do this, or, oh, I'm being told this. And you look at them as a person of authority.
Yes.
But that is not a law. And you need to write down what they said, and you need to research every single thing that has been said.
I agree.
And research everything about inductions.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you think, oh, I'm not going to get roped in, or I'm not doing that, that's okay. Just still learn about it, understand it, because you might say, oh, I'm not going to do that, I'm not going to get roped in. But what if you actually end up at the point where something medically necessary and you need to have one, and now you're not even sure the process? So so basically stop looking at baby clothes and start reading about
start learning.
You're going through. There's a lot to learn.
That's so true. That's a really good point. And I think like this is not like an endorsement for Hypnobabies, even though I thought it was great, but I just keep talking about it. But that was, I think, one of the pieces that I took away from it prior, like leading up to my birth, is that like I just learned so much about like different options that you have, and like how you can advocate for certain things or not for certain things, and just things that you don't realize. You especially if you are going a more traditional route and like having your baby in the hospital, I think you just assume that like everything has to be a certain way, and like you have so many options actually, but you just have to use your voice and you have to advocate for them.
Right. And you have to believe that you have like an innate ability to know what's good for you versus what the medical illness model has decided, and they say to everybody and every patient. So
yes,
the white coat syndrome is real. And yes, they went and had a lot of schooling and they're smart people, but they're also just following this like protocol, spouting things out. Doesn't mean that's going to be best for you. And it doesn't mean you have to choose it. So just taking more control and understanding what informed consent is, doesn't have to be combative. So those nurses aren't in there trying to give you a hard time or screw you over. They're doing their job. Just do your job and go home and read about it before you sign up for what you're being offered. It's not a law. So.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point. And I think, again, like that's another thing that just having that support can help just open your mindset to like some of the things that would be helpful for you to learn or look into and that kind of thing before you get there, because the time goes by slowly for me. I felt like I was pregnant for like 6 years, but it is only so much time. And like, for me, like I just tried to learn and be as prepared as I could. And it still, it didn't work out exactly the way that I planned, And so I think that's the other thing I would say is just, it's good to have a birth plan, but to also be flexible, and know that things might change or, and that's also okay. But also to know like why they're changing and to know if the changes are actually necessary or it's something that you have the option of getting back on track to more of what you had in mind. So it's just like, I think we just have a lot more options as, mommies to be than I think we realize.
Yes.
So all that stuff is important to know.
We do. And we have more options. And then we also have the way like society has set up the way we even view the whole process. So it's just like confusing overall. So there's not a lot of, there's so much planning on like the nursery, but no one's talking about the fact that you got to get a hold of your subconscious mind before you go into this, so there's a lot of other work that needs to be done than planning that nursery. So get a therapist, start therapy now before you and your partner get into the thick of parenting together, just as a lighthearted thing, not to go dig in and create problems, but like establish with a therapist, start learning about breath work, focus on your breath while you're pregnant every day, make it an exercise, focus on your jaw. The jaw is connected to the pelvic floor. So if you're clenching your jaw all day and your brain is trained to do that, you're going to have a hard time in labor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, see, who knew?
There's a lot. Be Her Village too. I would like to give a plug to behervillage.com. So if you do want a doula and you do want to learn about lactation, you do want some postpartum support, Be Her Village will help you sign up to basically get offerings off of your baby registry. So instead of everybody buying you toys and whatever, some people can just donate to your Be Her Village registry, and then you can pay your own support provider through that. So
yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. Well, I am going to put all of Amy's information in the show notes so that everybody can get a hold of her if anybody is interested in her doula services. I definitely can attest to how amazing she is. And thank you so much for being here today, Amy.
It's good to see you.
I'm so happy that you came on, and I think this can be very helpful to people. I know it would have been really helpful for me to hear some of this stuff even before I got pregnant, and definitely like when I was, shopping around for doulas. So if anybody wants any more information, like I said, I'm going to put all Amy's information. And thank you so much for being here, Amy. You're the best. Literal angel on earth. All right.
Thanks for listening to the Mandala Podcast. To learn more about Mandala counseling and health coaching, go to www.mandala-counseling.com. That's www.mandala-counseling, counseling.com, or call 239-360-1983, or visit us on Facebook or Instagram.